you can clone the repo and follow right along with Kevin as he goes through this. You can grab the URL off of the slide that's up there, and then clone that and make your own dev container and do this right along with us. So I guess, let me see what else is on here. Well, I already talked about that. So I'll introduce you to Kevin. Kevin Popken is a principal DevOps engineer with us here at Trility, and he's leading an engagement with one of our clients building an internal development platform right now using some of this kind of stuff. So this is ripped from the headlines. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Kevin.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for joining. What I'm going to do here for everybody is I'm going to go ahead and post this link for those of you that don't have it. This is pretty much all you really need to follow along if you want to do that. And I'd appreciate it if you did, because this is pretty awesome. Okay, so let me put this in the chat here. Let me find this. Hold on, I'm going to stop sharing just 1 second so I get this thing off the top of my screen, and then I'll share again. Sorry about this. Just posting this in the chat. Okay, now I'll share again. Okay, so I posted that in chat for those of you in there. And we're going to talk about dev containers and how they're going to supercharge your environment. And dev containers are something that it doesn't matter if it's infrastructure as code or you're just writing code, Node, or any other topic. It works great for anything really. So don't get stuck on the Terraform parts. You're going to learn a little bit about Terraform and TerraGrunt in this process, but as you'll see as we go along, it could really work for everything. So today we have a mission for tonight, and our mission tonight is to deploy. We're going to create some self-provisioning infrastructure for people to create a repository in Azure DevOps. Why this is cool is because this enables developers to be able to deploy whatever repository they want, but still apply all the rules and organizational settings that most enterprises want. So, but it enables people to move fast, not have to get a bunch of check marks, and still abide by all the different policies and things that the organization needs. So you're kind of getting out of the way, and you're kind of helping people get their jobs done and deliver business value. And this same pattern could be applied in the infrastructure as code, whether it's deploying a Git repo or it's a SQL database or cluster for AKS, Azure Function. It's the same pattern that you kind of apply. Quickly to go over this process of what this looks like, we really have the TerraGrunt parts. We're going to use a couple tools here, which is TerraGrunt and Terraform to do this. In TerraGrunt, we're going to have something. This is the primary spot, the resource file, which is going to be the declaration of what a developer wants. We have the TerraGrunt file, which is going to be the transformation of that file into something that Terraform understands. And then we have the variable files for Terraform. I know this is a lot. You'll see it, and I'm going to walk you through it. I'm just going to give you a quick high level here. But the variable files is basically a parameter file. So you say, how do I want to configure my module? Then we got our main file, which is our code that we want. So this is your IAC, your infrastructure as code. And then what it has is a provider, which is Azure DevOps. And it has a state file. And the state file basically says, here's the last time I checked, and said, this is what it looks like. And then finally, we have our Git repositories in actual Azure DevOps. So TerraGrunt, that maps a user file into something that Terraform understands. We have the Terraform that says, this is what we want our infrastructure to look like. And we have a state file that's basically checking to say, this is the last known state of our infrastructure. So how does dev containers help us? So we're going to be using dev containers to help us with this. And so basically dev containers are just a Docker container with all your infrastructure, all your different components and your dependencies all wrapped together, so you don't have to install them. So if you think about it, if you had projects, many different repositories with different node versions, you don't have to worry about using NVM or Pi environments or something like that. You could just pop between repository and repository, never have to install anything, and just say dev container go, and everything is ready for you to start working. So it's pretty amazing, because then you can standardize all sorts of different development aspects, and you can have consistency. And we've all spent like, why isn't this working? It doesn't build for me. It doesn't do this for me. And this helps solve a lot of these problems. So some of the tools we're also going to use besides Devcontainers is Terraform. And Terraform is basically just an IAC tool, which is infrastructure as code. And it's pretty simple. It's kind of, this is a little subset of that last document, which is you have your variables, which is kind of a parameters file. You have your main, which is the declaration of what you want. And then Terraform has different providers. So you can have AWS, Google, Azure, whatever you want. And then you have the state file, which is the last version of the code that was deployed. I say last version, it keeps basically all the IDs of the resources created. So then what it does is compares that, it compares your main file, and then it looks into the environment and says, does it match? And then says, do I need to delete? Do I need to modify? Do I need to add? And then finally, we have a tool, TerraGrunt. It's like, what's TerraGrunt? A lot of people that use Terraform don't use this. I like to use it because it reminds me of my coding days. You know, some of the principles, dry, don't repeat yourself. And really what it is just a thin wrapper for Terraform. It just adds a little bit of things to Terraform that Terraform doesn't natively support, but you really want it to support. So we're going to kind of go into a little bit of that. I put some links there, so if you guys want to really dive into TerraGrunt and what it does. But it really does simplify management, state management. The way Terraform typically works is you have the state file, and a lot of people put their whole environment in there. And so it locks the state file when you try to deploy a resource. Well, Terraform gives you some patterns to really make those state files a lot smaller. That'll be one example. And also to put common code in a certain location that gets injected into your Terraform modules. So, you know, especially if stuff like providers or where your state backend is and a lot of other little things. So we're going to be using TerraGrunt and Terraform. So I always try to use them together, but as I just described, you get you won't have to repeat yourself on a lot of code. You're going to have consistent environment management. You're going to see how we can, with TerraGrunt, we're going to be able to move from like development, staging, production, all those environments with minimal changes. It's a very easy process to do that. And then it also helps with dependency management between Terraform modules. So we all know that, hey, you know what, if I deploy this, I might need this other resource first. And so you can declare all that with your TerraGrunt modules and say, hey, when you run this, make sure you deploy the network first, or make sure the storage container gets deployed before you deploy your Azure function. So you can declare all those. And then the final tool we're going to use tonight is a tool called Pre-Commit. Pre-commit, I threw that in there because I really like it. I don't know if you guys have used it, but for those of you that maybe use a tool like Commitizen or Husky, and basically what it does is just a tool runner that hooks into the Git hook. So when Git has all sorts of different hooks, and you can, and it basically just registers with it. So before you commit, it says run this, and then pre-commit basically just runs through a loop and saying, okay, what do you want me to do now? And then you can just inject. There's a lot of community things that it will do, and we'll go through some of those. And you can also inject your own. So if it doesn't do what you want, you can actually add your own. So it's pretty cool. So like writing your documentation for Terraform modules automatically, linting your Terraform, running tfsec or Trivy, or whatever you can imagine you could pretty much do. So when you get to the code review process, you don't have to worry about all the nitpicky type stuff. You know, there's always somebody on the team that's really nitpicky. I want line breaks versus this, or you know, whatever it is. You know, maybe you're the person. But in the end, this takes care of a lot of those things. So when you get to the pull request, you're really focusing on delivering the business value and your story, and you're not really worrying about the little things because it will automatically take care of it for you. So kind of a cool thing. What's that? Yeah. So. We'll see that. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to dive into the code. And what I'd like I said, if you could follow along, it would be pretty awesome. And I think Ryan would be able to help support on some of these things. So let me go out to the repository. And this is public right now. So if we just go and we just need to clone the repository. So you're going to need Git essentially installed. What is it? No, let's see, documents, test, I think. Okay, make sure, test, cd, test. Okay, Git clone, the public repository, so everybody should be able to run that. One thing that you're going to need to do for those that want to follow along is you do need Docker. And so you need to have that running in the background before you start. And you also need VS Code. Nice thing about VS Code, it can now run .NET, Node, Java, Terraform, pretty much everything anymore, right? Okay, so we're going to open VS Code. Let me see here, and I'm going to open folder, and then I'm going to go to maybe. Where is it doing here? File, let's go to, okay, new window. All right, just go here. Okay, documents, and we're going to go to test. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and open this repository here. Trust, please. Whoops. Oh, just trust the authors. Okay, now that we have it, what I would like you to do is go over into VS Code and go into the extensions and install the extension Devcontainers. Now, once you do that, it might give you a pop-up about something about reopening in the dev container. As of right now, don't do that. But I do want to show you that if you open a new terminal in your app, in VS Code and you type in something like TerraGrunt, for example, you'll see TerraGrunt not found, pre-commit, also not found. So I didn't install anything on my local machine. Okay, and we're going to see how that all works and how Devcontainers help support all of that. So if we look at the folder structure, we have a couple things, folders here. We have the dev container, modules, resources, state, and then we have this pre-commit config. For brevity and save time, I kind of pre-wrote some of this code and put this all in there, and we'll go over that just so we can make it in the time frame that we have. But we'll start at the top here. We have this dev container folder, and you see it's .dev container, and then we have this dev container JSON. The JSON is nothing special, but we're going to walk through each part of it. So you have a name, you can call it whatever you would like, and then you have an image. So this is just kind of like a base Devcontainers image that they support. You can make this whatever you want. So you can actually write your own Docker file here. You can, like at the client that I have, what we're going to do is we take that image, we install some certs because they use the VPN. We install those, we push it to a container registry, and then we use that as our base image. So whatever you need to do as an organization, you guys could do. It's fully customizable of whatever you want. Then they have this concept of features. And so we're going to have a list of different features that you want. So in this case, we have Terraform. And as you see here, we're going to put the version of Terraform 1.75, TerraGrunt. We pin that version. These ones I didn't pin, but you can pin whatever you want. We have some extensions that are automatically going to be installed in VS Code. So people don't even have to worry about what extensions to use. Now, they can always add their own, but this enables us to be able to say, pick whatever you want. And then finally, we have this remote environment, and this is going to be like your environment variables. So you put whatever you want there, right? So if you want to make sure, like in this case, we're going to say, we're going to always put our Terraform log files at this path. This is and this is the level of logging we want to do, and we're going to be working in the dev environment because that's the defaults that we want for anybody working in on our application. So that's really it about the dev container file. We're going to get more into that as we get along, but that's the gist. Yeah. Yeah, so this is just your local environment. When you open a container, make sure that all those things are ready to go. So like your language server and stuff like that. So for example, if you go in here, if I didn't have Terraform module installed, and you could actually kind of see here, you see how it's kind of all gray right now? And when we're done, you're going to see that's all going to change. So when you open it in a container, everything's ready to go, and you don't have to worry about it. So that's the other nice thing is if there's certain things like a formatter, for example, that you want, you can have that as a customization in that. Okay, so then what we're going to have is a structure here. The first folder is just modules. Modules is where all the Terraform is going to go. And what I've done here is I separated it into folders. Right now we just have one folder. Eventually, if you really built this out, maybe you'd have like 8KS, function, storage, or something like that, and you put it in separate folders. And in this folder, we have a couple things that as I showed you, we have a variable file. This is your inputs. So we define just two variables here, which is a project. It's a type of a string. And we have a description. We have a variable called repositories. It's a map. And we have a description for it. So very simple. That's one of the reasons why I chose this, because it's a very simple process of a very simple demo. Then what we have is the main file. The main file is the ISC. This is what we actually want. And so what we've done here, the first thing is to say we want to get repository. And so this is just a basic loop in Terraform, and it reads a project from Azure DevOps, and you'll see the file that defines that. We provided the name, and then we initialize the repository. And then the next thing we said, okay, after you create that, we want to set some Git permissions. So we have a Git permission saying we're going to deny branch. So we're just going to say, just deny anybody creating branches on it. And then we're going to go ahead and say allow branch, and we're going to say it's okay to create branch as long as it starts with the word feature. So you can think about most organizations say, okay, I'm going to use trunk-based branching or something. I can have a feature branch, I can have a hotfix or a release branch, but that's it. I don't want people creating random branches. So this enables us to say, developers, you can create repositories, that's fine, but they're going to follow these rules every single time, right? And then you have an audit trail and everything else, so you're going to follow the rules. And it doesn't really matter whether you're doing it with Azure DevOps or any other or Azure or anything. This provides you an ability to put control around things, but enable developers. And then finally, we have our providers. We have a special provider here, Azure DevOps. As you saw the diagram, this is its way of communicating to Azure DevOps. This is also special because how providers works is essentially they just have to implement a specific interface for Terraform. You can create your own provider if you like as well. And then we have a configuration. We're going to use this Azure DevOps project that I created just for tonight. So it's going to be deleted after tonight, so don't worry so much about it. And then there's this data attribute to say, I want to read this from this project, and I'm going to grab this provided project name. Don't focus so much on that, but the big thing about that is instead of giving a GUID to provide right here, I wanted to provide a name because it's a little bit more friendly, and I just do a cross lookup. The other thing that I do in here is this is something that's going to come with pre-commit. I put this configuration file in here. This is to generate readmes automatically, and just to make sure that we do, the important part here is the recursive part. So it looks in subfolders. By default, it doesn't look in subfolders for us. And you can see the readme here. You can see in here, it will show you, the provider and the inputs basically that we need for this. And so it's a pretty simple file here. The next folder is going to be, we're just going down the line here, is the environment file. And this is the file that I talked about from a developer's perspective, saying I want a new repository. So I'm going to start off for me, and I'm going to say my repository is going to be Kevin1. And for anybody that's following along, just change the name to your name and whatever you want. And you can put 1 or 2. It's a map, so you can say Kevin, as long as it's Kevin2. Just go like that. And the reason why it's a map, because the eventual plan is to add other things, min reviewers, too. But I just didn't implement that part just to keep it simple. But you can put as many of them as you want in there. And that's the whole part. And you can see actually the project and repositories will actually map project and repositories. That's it on that. The next part is the state file. And state file is the Terragrunt part. And the first thing it says, okay, in Terraform, here's my source. And as you can see, it just paths out to the repositories here. It has a locals, which is basically just reads that resource file. As you can see, we go into the resources, Azure DevOps. One interesting thing here is we put this environment variable here for TF environment. And as you can see in the dev container, we actually are setting that environment variable right here in dev. So that means if later on we need a QA environment, we would just basically just rename this to be, maybe QA. And that's all we need to do. And now we can start deploying to QA without touching anything else. We never have to change our Terraform or our TerraGrunt module. Everything just works based off that little configuration file. So you can think when you want to promote from dev, QA, stage, production, that's all you need to do for those. And you can have different configurations in here because obviously I can say in this, I can say Kevin 3. So in QA, I would have it, that's how that would look. So we don't need to go through there. Okay, so the next part is I talked about the mapping. So in this case, inputs, and inputs are basically what needs to match with the variables that you have defined in here. And so the nice thing is that file could have been whatever, because I put the name, the Terraform variable name has to be here. But if in my YAML file I had it to, I don't know, something else, that would be okay. TerraGrunt or Terraform only cares about the project, and I can call it whatever I want. But in this case, just to keep it simple, I just kept it the same name, and there's nothing special in there. But sometimes in YAML files, you want a different format, and it might be a little bit different. Or you have a consistent resource file across all of your modules, even though it's different what Terraform needs, and then you can do your mapping in there. Now, TerraGrunt can do a lot more than just this. Typically, you'll have a root one and so forth, but we don't need to do that for tonight. That'd be another session on TerraGrunt. And then finally, what we have is the pre-commit file. So this is where I talk about just kind of a series of hooks that it connects to. And each one of these is a different repository. So in this case, this is some base hooks. So it will loop through these in order. And then it runs the specific hooks that are in that repository, and you define those. So if we could go out to, whoops. We're going to go out to this, and I'm just going to show you. This is pretty cool. And there's a lot of repositories out there that kind of support that, but with different ones. Did I not those pre-commit hooks? Okay, let's just. Okay, so if you could just go out there, you can see all the different ones. So you can look at protecting, looking for private keys. You could do one for passwords. You know, I don't know if you guys have seen it, but it's really frustrating when you've committed code, and I'll say that I've done it before, and it had a password in. And it sucks because if you have a tool that says you can't do passwords, now I have to rewrite the Git history. Well, with the pre-commit, you can actually inject that in there, and it won't let you commit if it finds it. So it will never be in your commit history to rewrite it. So that alone saves you some time, and that's pretty cool, right? Also in this, depending on the tool, there's some arguments that it will support. So in this case, it's fix LF for the line endings. Same thing with this Terraform format. And as you see in my Terraform docs, I specify that the root module is going to be .modules, which is where all my Terraform actually is. And finally, we have a README. It just talks about some of the tooling that you need in this. And some of the steps in case you wanted to follow along in the process. So from a project structure, does anybody have any questions about that before we kind of move on to actually the fun stuff? Even from the audience there? There's a couple ways. You can just handcraft it, obviously, or there's you can go to the command palette, and in that it will give you, say, Devcontainers, new dev container. In this case, what's that one? Yes, you can. Yep. And the great thing about it is they have all sorts of templates. So if you want Node, Python, .NET, whatever, it will kind of walk you through a little wizard and then pick it. You can add your own value mounts. You could do whatever you want. The only thing I say is make sure you have a Git folder in there first, because if it doesn't map it correctly sometimes. But that would be the only thing that I would think that just keep in mind. Anything and everything. Yep, that's the thing. It's a Docker container, right? So you can build it however you want, right? And then those features, we're going to get into some of the features. They have tons of features, and if you don't even like them, it's easy to implement your own feature, right? There's a Git repository out there. You can actually do a pull request or create your own. There's nothing saying that you can't. So it's pretty easy to actually do that. They give you a whole guide on how to implement those, but I haven't found one that that I needed that wasn't already there. So it's pretty cool. So what I'm going to do is oh, okay. So VibeOff basically wanted to know is if if this would work with multiple languages, and could, what do you do for that case? If, if it's .NET or something like that, and could you build your own and so forth? So I will repeat the questions next time. Sorry about that. Okay, so we'll get started in the dev container. As just remember, we started off with doing stuff like this, and it didn't work. So we're going to go to run commands, and we're going to rebuild and open. Now, the one thing I want to bring up is a couple things. If you're on a VPN, this might not work so great, depending on your organization, right? So at my current client, we have to do some stuff with certificates, and that's why we had to build our own image. But I can't account for that because every organization is different, right? I mean, it might just work for you. Also, the first time you're going to build it, it takes a little time, depending on what your network is. So on my personal, on my home computer, the subsequent times it's very, very fast. It's just the first one. You downloaded base images, especially if you don't have anything cache. It has to build it, so it's going to take some time. But I've seen it at my house where it might take 20 seconds, and I've seen it where it's taken a couple minutes, right? It really just variable on network and so forth. So it pulls the base image first, right? So it has to do that. And then the second thing, it has to install all those features. And so some of those things require some certificates for the GP key or whatever. Okay, so now, as you see, I'm opening a dev container. You're like, well, it sure looks the same to me, right? But the first telltale sign that it worked is if when I open my terminal, do you see the pretty colors now? Before it was all white and boring, right? Now, let's try something else. Recommit. Oh man, it's still not there. Something didn't work, right? No, just kidding. We'll see why that doesn't work. But look here, Paragrunt. Now it's working, right? I didn't install it or anything, right? Other thing, let's go in here and let's take a look at that. You see that syntax highlighting now that wasn't there before? It's pretty cool, right? Didn't install anything, just rebuilt the container as a dev container, and it was super fast to do that. Yes. Yes, it's actually running. So if we brought up Docker, let's see if we get probably up here, right? Docker desktop. Yeah, go to dashboard. Maybe. Where's my Docker? Okay. I don't know. Sometimes when you share your screen. Okay, so you can actually see that this one's running here, VS Code, dev container. And so there you go. That's probably the one that we're running. And if you open your Docker, you're going to see it. So let's go back over here. And what I want to do now is let's go back through this because we notice that pre-commit isn't installed right now. So we want to install pre-commit because we want to get the value out of that. If you notice here, pre-commit isn't installed here. So what I'm going to do here is, let's go here. Let's see here. Where is it? Here. Sorry. Yep. This is the right one. Well, hold on. I think I got two of them running here. So hold on. Let me get rid of this one here. Might have to quit because I think I had multiple here. Let me just. Sorry about that. And this one is the wrong one, I think. Yep, this is the wrong one. Okay. Okay, so there we go. This is the right one. And I'll just verify here. Okay, so in here, what we're going to do is we're going to pull up this dev container features because we're looking for a new feature for a dev container. And specifically, we're looking for pre-commit. Okay, so they do have pre-commit. And as if you go Prettier, Prisma, Prometheus, Bloomy, pretty much everything is a huge list, right? And so what we're just going to do is we're going to grab this. We're going to go to our dev container here, and we're going to say, you know what? We're going to add this, and we can just add it to the end here. It's okay. Okay, so we just add it like this. Now, when I did this, it says it's changed. So let's go rebuild. Now, sometimes rebuild takes a little bit of time, as we discussed, but it only has to rebuild when you change that base dev container file, right? And usually when you set it up, it doesn't change so often. And there's other things you could do to kind of abstract that. So when it starts, there's like post start command, post create command, all these types of things. So you could run scripts or whatever, bash or whatever you need to do, depending on what tools that you installed in it. So like in ours, we automatically run AZ login, right? So then you automatically logged in and nobody has to do that manually. Or some of them, I even we register some scripts to say change environment, and then it swaps from dev and everything else, because the subscriptions are pretty static. But however you guys want to set it, what makes sense for your environment, that's what I recommend on that case. But I do recommend, like, if you're going to use Azure or AWS, you do some kind of login. So as soon as you run the container, people are ready to go, and they don't have to do anything else. Yes. Yes, so he's saying that what the powerful feature is to have one dev container that he can publish, and then all his different team members can use that. Yeah, absolutely, you can do that. And you know, as you see in here, the file itself for a dev container is in the Git repository. Generally, in that case, you'd have your one image, and everybody's going to be using that. If you want to do the JSON file, it might be a little bit different, because it really should be in the repository of the code that they have, right? But you can make a template file, and if you make a template file, then everybody could just download it. Or even like you saw here where I'm generating the Git repo, you can actually just clone that or put that in the Git repo when you create the Git repo automatically. Right? So anybody needs a new Git repo, dev container's already there. You can even say, what type of environment do I want? Node, do I want this? And then when it gets generated, you can actually scaffold the whole project out if you'd like, right? All these base type things if you kind of follow this model. Okay, so as you see, it didn't take so long to do this. And I'm going to run commit. I think it's initialize. It doesn't matter. But as you can see now, I didn't really do a whole lot. Let's see, pre-commit. Okay, there you go. As you see, I didn't have to do a whole lot here. I just ran pre-commit, and now it's up and going by just adding it to my my doc file, right? Okay. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to go to the state file now once this is done. So pre-commit needs to install the hooks the first time you run it. You can actually configure that with the dev container as well to make sure that it installs it immediately. Something you could play with. I know I do it on my my current project or my last project as well. So then, because this is a one-time initialization to install the Git hooks there. Okay. Okay.
How does containerization compare to using package.json for managing project dependencies?
Yeah, so project.json, I mean, in this case, you still need to install things on your local machine, right? And so in this case, you don't need to install everything. And it's not just about some of your dependencies for like DLLs or whatever the case is. This is also like extensions to your development environment. This also is a lot more flexible because you can run scripts. You can say, you know, in this case, I can say something like I was talking about, we can say post start, like post start, let's see here, post start, post attach, post start, yep. And we could say, you know, AZ login, you know, whatever you want, or run the script. So you have a lot more flexibility than what a package.json would do. And think about it, if you got a package.json in one project, you also need something different in a different project, right? You got to think about an organization where you're going to be, especially if you start having microservices, and I've seen companies that have thousands of repositories, right? Who wants to know the dependency and how to start thousands of different repositories? It just doesn't scale, right? So when you start using Devcontainers, you have a scalable model to say, I could reduce all the cognitive load of trying to figure out how the heck someone put something together every single time, right? So usually containers, I do two things. I have, you also want to build your code in a container as well, because there's nothing like, hey, all the people that supported this project aren't there anymore. I need to build this thing because I need to deploy it. How does this work? What dependencies does it actually need? Is this going to work in production when I roll it out? So I like for me, the best is having a dev container where I can do my development. I don't have to think about it. And I have a Docker file for my code to show exactly how I build my code, and I could run it everywhere, right? So build it once. It's the same thing that runs locally as it runs in production. And I just use configuration and things like that to be able to modify the behavior. But that's it. Hopefully that answered the question. Okay, so now what we're going to do here is we're going to go to, if you go to CD, we're going to go to infra, state, and we're going to go to ASDO repos. And now what we're going to do is we're going to run a command called terragrunt. Oh, I want to show something real quick before we do that. If we go to the repositories here, you'll see that I have one repository here. Not a big deal. And so if I go to terragrunt apply, okay, so it's going to start running. It's going to download some of the providers here. And it says no valid credentials. Dang it. Okay, so we're going to fix that real quick. I'm going to actually give you guys my personal access token. It's just scoped to this project. The project's dead after this. There's nothing really you can do. Doesn't really matter. I'm going to post it in chat. But what you're going to do is I have a bash command. And if you just copy this here, and then I'll post this in chat where my access token is. Let's see here. Whoops. If you don't know how to do a access token, let's see here. I think maybe I'm signed in the wrong account here, though. Let's see, personal access token. Uh-oh. Hold on. Let me sign into my other account here. Sign in. Okay, so personal access tokens are basically generated by going up here in this little cog here, and you can go to personal access tokens. And apparently I fell. Why is this not allowing me? Okay. Why is this not allowing me to generate personal access tokens? I own this account. I just log back in. My right account. Well, maybe we can't do this here. Hold on a second. Why? Let me, in the organization settings, let me go here, public examples. Yeah, that's kind of what I feel like. What's that? Yeah, hold on a second here. Let me just wipe all my cookies here. Okay. That didn't work. There. Aha. No, why do I don't want to make you my default browser? Oh, let's see here. I don't know. Why did I get locked out of this? My organization settings is password. What's that? Go to Azure. Yeah, it's not doing anything here. Hold on a second. No feeds were found. I think Azure DevOps is actually just having a problem right now because there's no way I don't have access to my own repository. Let's see. Nope, it's still trying to sign into a different wrong portal. What's that? No, it's not one. Yeah, let me just close like all my browsers here. Yeah, hold on. Let me just go to. Okay. Nope, that's not what I want to do. Switch directories. Oh, where is switch tenant? And then with a different account. Yeah. Worst case, I can try a different one. So, this is also wrong. I don't know. They must have messed up my account somehow. See, look, it keeps getting me in the wrong account. Well, that's unfortunate. Let me just switch and see if one of my other repositories is working. And I can just go over here. Okay, so that works. Let me just create a different project here and we could just use that. That's okay. That's probably a bad name for that. And then we can show that. Sorry about that. Just take a second. Okay, so let me generate this personal access token. Okay, new token. Okay, test. And we'll just say custom defined, and we're going to say what you need is read and let's just put read and write manage. There's no code in there. You don't need that. You don't need that. Packaging, read write. Let's just show all scopes. Actually, don't we need the puke. Project and teams, read write, and source files, read write, or secure files. Nope, it doesn't need that. And service connections, symbols, task groups, tokens, user profiles, probably need to read that, and wiki work items. Okay, so we're going to check this out for those, and I'll just regenerate it. And what we need to do then is we're going to have to say export this. And then we're going to have to just change the name of the project here. So we just have to go into providers here for those falling around, and we just switch this. There you go. And then the final thing that we have to do is if we go into here, test project, we just have to go over into there and just set that. Okay. And I'll put this in the chat too. That's going to do this because I think this is going to be kind of hard to find it. And okay, so let's try it now and just say TerraGrant plan. And as you see here, let's see here, unauthorized. I probably just need to add more permissions. So let's just add more permissions on that. And we're going to edit this. And what would it need? Okay, so you can read security, agent pools, analytics, auditing, build. I don't know, just give it connected server, deployment groups, entitlements, environment. Okay, extensions, graph. You need to be able to read the graph there and read. Okay. Okay, so now as you see, we got a green. And what this is going to do is going to create 6. And that's because we have 2 projects here, 2 repositories. And if you look at our main, we have 1, 2, 3 resources, right? So 3 resources times 2, you get 6. And so for those that follow on, you can TerraGrant apply. And then you can say, yes, go ahead and do that if you're using my values here. And you can see as it's creating here, well, get permissions. I need to do permissions here. So many permissions, right? Let's see here. Where's my access tokens? And we're going to edit. And let's see, read right. There you go. Code. Let me just make this bigger here so it's easier. Okay, extensions, graph, read scope, add. There you go. Identity, read mag. We don't need that. Member management, notifications, packages, pipelines, read write, pull request threads. It's fine. Secures, read. Okay, there's really not much in this account. It's just kind of junk account. So I'll just no. Let's see if this works again. Yeah, you know what? I'm going to disable it here in a second anyway. So there you go, full access. Take the power. Let's see here. We got this. And we got the main project here. Test project. Not allow default permissions in. Okay, and well, sorry about this. Let's see here. What's missing on my project? So we have this. And I was able to read. So I was able to read. So we know we got permissions on that. And we have providers here. And this is the provider. Okay. Well, maybe we're not going to be able to show that because I'm not sure what's going on with my DevOps accounts right now. But I promise it does work. Just not quite right now. The other thing I wanted to show also is if you add another parameter here, and then if you type in like get, let's see here, you add a get commit message description, and then oh, you need these here. Sorry, just make these up this year. Doesn't really matter here. And this is okay for me too. And then we say we had a commit here. It's my hold on, pre-commit. Okay, pre-commit, run. All files. All right, well, when I ran all files here, let's see here, you can see that this failed the Terraform docs. Now, I should be hooking into that, so I probably just in the process here, obviously, is doing something wrong, but we should have, yeah, there's something just messed up on my demo right now. So sorry about that. Let's see here. Why is this? Let me do something here. Going to just rebuild this container here. Yeah, there we go. And let me look at this here. Okay, and then we could go. Now you shouldn't have to do this. Your commit, when you try to commit, it would usually just automatically, well, it does always automatically run all your files like this. And then, like I said, we have that the hook, so it should be able to generate our files like this. And as you can see here, it's actually there right now. So, yeah, okay. So sorry about we couldn't get that running. Let me try this one more time here. But once this is done here, and then I'll go. This takes a couple of minutes here, but usually it goes pretty quick. And I could just open a new terminal here. What's it right here? CD, state, Esdo. And then I just need that. I have this right in here, right? Oops. And my file says it's not there. Let's see here. What's the name of the project? This project. Ah, it's here. And I exported those, right? Export. Oh, I guess I got to get an N in there, right? I could spell that. Yeah, something's wrong with the token configuration, but usually that works. As you see, I have read access. It's reading it. And you see it's looking up the project ID, so that's looking for it. And usually that it would create that. But that being said, no. The whole point is it will create the yeah, it's going to create the repos for us, right? And so that's the whole point of this, right? And then everybody could kind of create those repos. So let me just say this: personal access tokens. Here, this we're going to use this one here. I didn't have the full one. Okay, hold on. Let me just regenerate this. No, I don't even need to regenerate it. Let's try this again. Hold on. For some reason, that save that I did, S project, didn't take. Yeah, now it's working. For some reason, when I put the full access, it didn't save. So I had two projects in here now. So if I go over here, look, Kevin 1, Kevin 2, Miriam created a project as well. So anybody that wants to create a project, they're more than welcome to create a project with that. But as you can see, it works. And you can add additional ones. So if I say Kevin, I don't know, Kevin 3, uppercase, doesn't really matter. We're gonna, this project, I don't know why it's here. And let's see, what did I do? That's project, that's project. And I wonder if it's because of that name here. Project should be right here, little date project. data. Yeah, should be passing that in. Okay, but anyway, I have, let me refresh this. I know, okay, so then you got Kevin 3 set up. And we could even test here. Let's see here. Let's do a new branch. Maybe. As you see, I can't create a branch because I created a test. Now we'll go say feature blue. And there you go. It did. Yep. So you can start setting like pull request policies, minute reviewers, everything that you want that you need to configure. Usually what I do is even map like ASO intra ID groups, and I map them directly to Azure DevOps. And then I could put those as the reviewer group. So if you think about an organization, you could put dynamic groups in intra ID. So anybody that starts an organization, you put some attributes to say they work for this team, they automatically get added to a group that's automatically added to Azure DevOps. And then the teams are responsible for the repositories and everything else. So it's all configured and set up. And then when the teams, rate their repositories, all the rules are configured. And the great thing about also doing it in this case is if somebody goes to the UI and they have power and then they change something, the next time this pipeline runs, it trues everything back up, right? Because I don't know. I'm super guilty of this. Sometimes I'm like, well, maybe I need to bypass this policy real quick, because I'm in a, for whatever reason, right? And I've forgotten to put that policy back there. And so, but the next time that the pipeline ran, it trued it all up and I'm back in a good state, right? And then I know that other people can't bypass that policy because you don't want to risk that. But sometimes there's reasons why you want to put that policy there. Okay, so any questions then or concerns or anything else? I think that, okay, so what Viboff asks is he sees the benefit of running Devcontainers and he wants to know if there's any disadvantages. I think at first, maybe getting it set up, making sure your volume mappings are correct. Once you get it working, it works great, right? And kind of getting the feel for it sometimes takes a little bit, but the biggest struggle probably I've run into is just organizationally, like if the VPN is causing a lot of problems or security, then you just fight with the security group, right? For no reason. I say no reason. It's great to be secured, so don't take it that way. But that could be the biggest holdback on that. Or if you're running, sometimes the people Windows, like the WSL or something like that, maybe their organization doesn't support WSL. But going back to security and IT administration for that. But that's probably the biggest thing that I find is just, IT security that runs into some issues. Not to say they're not secure or anything, it's just organizations, some people get a little crazy about that. Yeah, so, if you want to run like Podman or something like that or anything, the answer is, I don't know. I haven't tried it with any other. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, when I started using Devcontainers, it was before Docker was, bought and went behind a paywall. And it depends on the size of your organization, right? So some of the things they have a couple of requirements like what your revenue is and also how many downloads, and they kind of throttle those things. So I think it's the size of your organization could make a difference. And you can also look at it from the standpoint if maybe you don't want to do it for every development team, but maybe you could do it for the certain ones. That's also things that I've seen organizations do. Say there might be other Docker container type products out there that you can use as well. I don't know. but you can look at it and say, is there some, even if, like I said, if you need a small license to say this is really complicated because maybe they're running the Elixir or something like that, or Rust or something that's just non-standard, it makes a lot of sense to put it in a dev container to make sure that you can support it from a long-term standpoint. Otherwise, I think every company should have something similar to Docker. I say every developer should be running Docker containers. But you know that, Vaibhav.
I,
Yeah.
other
Yeah, I know you can use Podman to build containers and push containers and do things like that. Rancher, yeah, I think that's an abstraction layer on top of it. There used to be a Docker runtime, there's something similar called Rocket, I think. I don't know about that, but yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah. So any other questions from folks? Like it, hate it? Or what? So-
Have you ever seen any pushback or like, you know, if a developer doesn't know how to set up their local machine, like where are we as like a development company, or like, have you seen any pushback or seen other than productivity gains where like maybe this was more of a hassle, or that kind of once you get set up, it's just smooth sailing?
Yeah, I hear that a lot of times. So he's basically saying, do you get any pushback, for the folks that say, hey, if he can't set up his machine, then he shouldn't be developer. Well, then I would say I shouldn't be developer because I've run into projects where I just couldn't figure out what the hell I was doing because it was some convoluted setup. Some very clever person set something up and I just couldn't figure out how to run the damn thing, That being said, I get the argument. However, you got to look at when you're in an organization, you want to be able to cater to not just your senior devs. You also want to cater to your new devs. I want to be able to say a testament to say I developed something good is to say I took a brand new junior developer or an intern and they're productive within a couple days, right? So that's why I have a lot of problems with very framework heavy type solutions like Service Fabric, for example, when it came out, because you really had to know Service Fabric. It's not like something I'm going on Google and saying this is how you do a basic API in Express or ASP.NET, right? So you have to really understand the framework. So productivity very quick. So those folks is like, yeah, great, you could do it and you're smart, but we have to cater to everything from an organization. But I have found that even the smart people, like I've worked with people from Microsoft plenty of times, and once I got them on dev containers, you know what they do? They said we're using dev containers everywhere we go now, right? So sometimes it's kind of a transition for folks until they start seeing it. But once they start using it, especially especially in the IAC, because that's predominantly where my career has been recently for the past so many years. But I haven't seen anybody use it and say, I want to go back, right? Usually what I say is, I hear, actually in every case, what I've heard is this is amazing and I think everybody should do this. And that's the only thing I've heard once people have started using this. But you might get some folks to say, well, aha, they should know how to do this. They're a developer, okay? But that's not really fair to everybody, right? At least I don't think so. I like to be inclusive. Focus on delivering value, make money for the business. Let's focus on the hard problems. Like, why would anybody want to spend, I say, any time trying to figure out how to run your project? I would rather be talking about how to do graceful degradation, outbox patterns, inbox patterns, things like that, how to structure my code for, maybe CQRS or anything like that, that's actually adding value on a technical level. But if I can't figure out where to put my npm-rc file, and I spend a couple hours on that because for whatever reason, machine setup or security things that don't give me access and I have to use a separate account for this or whatever from an environmental standpoint. Nobody should be spending a lot of time on that.
This
Uh,
all you need is
Well, I don't think it's hard to implement in a project team because the only thing you really got to do is figure out where your dependencies are, create this Docker JSON file, right? And try it out and see if it works. And if it works, great. And if it doesn't, then, well, why? And or you say it doesn't work for us, right? But honestly, it shouldn't take you more than, I mean, you could just have it pre-built container. You could just go up here and say Devcontainers, new dev container from, you tell it to stack, right? Add your features that you want, and you should be running and going. And as long as they have Docker running, something that could run a Docker container, essentially, basically it needs a Docker daemon running in the background. So whether that's Docker desktop or something else that implements that same API, then I think you're good to go for anything that you want to do. But, yeah.
I've seen it. I believe they are using it there, like, it brought some time machine, but it doesn't work so well.
Now, Buff is saying that he's run into a lot of issues where, people is working differently on different machines because of different environments. And I don't know if you guys ever use Python, but it sucks with the different Python versions, right? And Pi environments and stuff. You have to create your virtual environments and everything and making sure it's the same as everybody else. Are you using pip or are you using something else, poetry and all these other kind of things that you need to set up? You don't have to worry about this with this, or, if you're doing Go development because you're doing some infrastructures type stuff, boom. It doesn't really matter. You can just, as long as the dev container is there, you're ready to roll, right? Every single time. You don't have to think about it. So that's, no. And I always like to preface that with now. I don't think there's going to be any cost with it, but I didn't think Docker was going to go behind a paywall. So never say never. Yeah. That's right. Yeah, I think it's going to be free. VS Code's free. All the features are open source anyway, right? So, and matter of fact, you can implement them yourself, right? There's documentation for it. It's very simple. You can clone the repository, keep it as long as you want. So there's a lot of options that you have for that. So I highly doubt that it's ever going to go behind a paywall or something like that. Yeah. So he's asking if there's any security or compliance issues with. I think you're always going to run in security and compliance no matter what. It depends on the level of security and compliance that it depends on the team that you're working with, right? Some are very good with it, and some people are very particular. The nice thing about it is okay. So as of right now, there's not a lot of people that are scanning these features, right? Usually, what they do is they'll scan the libraries from like an npm file, like a package.json, or you're scanning it from, your .NET projects. But I haven't seen anybody looking through this yet. So I think right now you're going to be good from these packages. I think the big thing is you're going to run into is actually installing these packages where they're going to say, no, you can't do that. You might have some security teams say, well, this isn't installing because of the key or whatever the case is. And they're going to say, what are you trying to install? You're going to send them the repo, and then maybe you have some issues, right? Because they're going to look at license and stuff. I've never had it not cleared. Let's put it that way. But that doesn't mean that you won't have an organization that will lock it. But that's true for anything, right? Every organization is different. You just never know. Some people, have some security that's focusing on saying no, and other ones focus on enabling, right, while still being secure. And it just depends on your team. What's that? Yeah, I can share the slide deck. Yep. Yes, we can share that. Any other questions from folks? All right, then. I would say thank you all for joining remotely. I hope it was worthwhile. Sorry about the little blip with that. I don't know what's happening to that DevOps account, but what's that? Yeah, exactly. But everything else went smooth. So it's just this one little bit, right? So thank you so much, everybody. Awesome. And we'll post the slides in the chat for everybody, for those that want those. And yeah, thank you, Trility, for supporting and sponsoring this session tonight, and everybody for coming and joining. Thank you, everybody.